Hi. Um, the piece of legislation that I chose to talk about this week was the IDEA. And since COVID is still very much affecting our education system, I wanted to find an article that talked about the IDEA, early childhood, and COVID. And so one of the most interesting articles I found was from April of 2020, so right after all of this began, um, really began. And so basically, a New Jersey school district was having parents at all of the IEP meetings sign a waiver that said that they could not sue the school or the district for anything. You couldn't, specifically disability related. So you could not advocate for your child if you thought that the school was not doing what they were supposed to. You could not press charges if you thought that the IEP in any form, which is a legal document, was incorrect or if related services were not provided, um, anything like that, if the IEPs were not compliant, anything. They also specified that you could not press charges if you thought that negligence was involved. It was very intense. Um, so really, that's the whole main part of the article. Looking further into this, it was very interesting because this school district, this issue was brought to light by tons of people who lived and sent their children in that district to professionals, teachers, like lots of people were calling them out. Um, but really, and lots of news stations and articles were also covering this locally, but they did not take any of that back or send their statements or say, okay, we're not going to do this anymore until it went national. And so I picked the article from HuffPost because they are actually the news outlet that brought it so much publicity that they were like, okay, I think that we should probably not do this anymore because it's illegal and we're nationally known that we're doing this illegally. So that's very interesting, and that's why I actually chose the HuffPost article specifically to review this. So this article relates to our readings this week, which first of all, it shows how we've progressed into the 21st century and how some schools and districts are viewing our students. They are not viewing our students, especially those with disabilities, which includes students in early childhood. They are not viewing them as individuals. They're not viewing them as students who we want to help succeed. They are viewing them as potential liabilities, and they are not viewing their families as partners. They're viewing them as people who are going to sue the district. So I thought all of that was very interesting. And this also relates to our readings as well by the legislation. Um, and so my impression of all of this is that overall, this is just ridiculous. So as a special ed teacher, and I don't know how this works in New Jersey, but under the IDEA, the state of South Carolina requires us that at the beginning of any meeting for a student with a disability, whether that's an IEP meeting, an eligibility determination meeting, a reeval, a special review amendment, even if it's just a meeting for a transportation form, even if they're going to be riding a bus with general education students at the beginning of that meeting, even if it's just a parent-teacher conference, we give the parent procedural safeguards. I've seen this in several different districts, and all districts do it differently. Some print it, some email you a copy, some give you a QR code. But regardless, you cannot begin the meeting until that parent has their procedural safeguards. And there's a place in the IEP that the parent has to sign that says, I agree. It says it a lot more fancy, but it's basically, I agree that I have received procedural safeguards. And the procedural safeguards are basically telling the parent, this is what is compliant, this is what is expected, these are the services we have to provide under the IDEA. And if this district is not providing those to your student, you can advocate for your student by pressing charges and going through due process. And so at the beginning of all the IEP meetings I'm like, hey, if I'm not doing my job, here's how you can sue me and the district. It's just very interesting. It's a lot different. But it is so important for parents, especially those who have students with disabilities who are early childhood age, to have teachers and LEAs and people in their schools, related service providers, who are really coming alongside them. Because a lot of parents who have students with disabilities who are early childhood age, this could be their first child who has a disability. And so it is really our job to come alongside them and help teach them, hey, this is how you can advocate for your student in an educational sense. These are what the procedural safeguards really are. These are the services that we're going to provide your child. And if at any point you have questions or you think it's not working, we want you to be involved. BabyNet is provided under the IDEA, and if that wasn't being provided, they couldn't point that out. They couldn't bring that up in New Jersey. Early interventions, and all of that is so new. Developmental delays can be diagnosed and provided until students are 10. Like, all of this is early childhood age, and these parents basically were just told, sign this waiver, we give you no resources now. We're not going to walk alongside you. We're not going to help teach you. And that's something that is so important, especially of parents and families and caregivers who have students who are early childhood age. That's a big part of that, because we have the IFSPs. We have all of these different things for early childhood that are different than just transition IEPs or normal IEPs. Like IEPs and early interventions and related services are so much more intense and important when students are early childhood age. And so I just think that it's really important to talk about this and point this out. And I'm really excited to read all of y'all's comments and posts and watch all of your videos.